Hey, everybody, this is Joe Joseph, and this is your Daily News Brief brought to you by the dailysheeple.com. And I want to start out today with a great article mirrored by the Daily Sheeple, this by the freethoughtproject.com. And it's entitled, Hillary Promises Bankers She'll Stand Against Pot Legalization, quote, in all senses of the word, in a leaked speech. Now, of course, you know that the war on drugs is the biggest farce that there is, that prohibition has never worked in the entire history of this country. I would have to say probably never has prohibition ever been effective. Europe has come to grips with this as they found that, by educating people, you pretty much can stop most of the problems that you have inherent to, drug abuse and addiction. Well, Justin Gardner of the Free Thought Project wrote about this. He says WikiLeaks has arguably been the most important thing that's happened to the elections, if not the veneer of democracy, in quite a long time. We've been able to see the true side of politicians and bureaucrats like never before. And in Hillary Clinton, we see a figure beholden to Wall Street, working diligently to advance the influence of financial corporations over government policy and taxpayer money. Her mega donor list is a who's who of mega banks that also happen to benefit from the TARP bailout. Isn't that interesting? Now, in return for their money, Clinton gave speeches to Wall Street giants behind closed doors between 2013 and 2015. And she told Goldman Sachs she was far removed from ordinary people and that you need both a public and private position. Now, Clinton has vacillated terribly on the issues of things like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a gift to her donors by very unpopular, and very unpopular, by the way, to Americans and Europeans alike, who see it for the fleecing that it is. And she was for the TPP before she was against it. And the only reason why she's against it is because she knows that a lot of the people that would vote for her, a la Bernie Sanders supporters, would not support her if she was for TPP. Now, if Clinton supporters believe she'll do anything about the government's war on cannabis, you should probably think again, because the good people over at marijuana.com have been studying the leaked emails, and during one of these Wall Street speeches, Clinton expressed a clear opposition to cannabis legalization. And during an onstage Q&A session with Xerox chairman and CEO in March 2014, Clinton used Wall Street's terminology to express her opposition to ending cannabis prohibition in all senses of the word. And this is interesting. So this is a back and forth between, at the time, Secretary Clinton and Ursula Burns. And Ursula Burns said, so long means thumbs up, short means thumbs down, or long means I support, short means I don't. I'm going to start with, I'm going to give you about 10 long shorts. And Hillary Clinton said, even if you could make money on a short, you can't answer short. And Ursula Burns said, you can't answer short, but you got to be careful about letting anybody else know that. They'll bet against you. So legalization of pot? And Secretary Clinton says short in all senses of the word. The exchange with Burns is part of an 80-page document containing emails by John Podesta, her campaign manager. And this has been a problem for a long time because a lot of her supporters are for marijuana legalization. And as a matter of fact, the campaign has been flooded with emails asking for support of this legalization. So again, take multiple stances. Privately, she's telling these mega banks and these special interests that no, she's against it. But meanwhile, she's telling voters that she's open to the idea. So this is something to understand, and also understand that the war on drugs is a big, big, big business. Big business. A lot of people talk about the money to be made as a result of marijuana legalization. And of course, that would benefit you, the taxpayer. That would benefit the states, but it will not benefit special interests like Big Pharma, the people that Hillary Clinton supports, and lawyers. They're not going to go for it. All of a sudden now, petty drug crimes and defending petty drug crimes, that's out the door. That's a big boon for them. So you're going to have the lobby for, the lawyers that are going to be against it. There's a whole lot here to understand. There's a big push against this legalization effort. And there's an unprecedented number of states that are going to be voting on this marijuana issue this fall. It's very interesting. I mean, a number of states. Washington Post reported on this, and they say this is a pivotal year for American drug policy. More states than ever will consider easing restrictions on marijuana use this November. Voters in 5 states will decide whether to fully legalize recreational use, while voters in 4 more states will weigh in on whether to allow medical marijuana. And the outcome of these initiatives could set the tone for national marijuana legalization going on and going forward. Big state victories for pro-marijuana contingents, recreational weed in California, medicinal weed in Florida, could widen the gap between state and federal marijuana policies, ratcheting up pressure on Congress and the next presidential administration to provide a fix. Let me go over some of the states now that are voting on marijuana this November. California has a referendum on recreational marijuana, and a yes on that in the world's 6th largest economy would loom large in the marijuana debate, making marijuana legal along the entire West Coast. And that would be huge, because right now there's a $2.7 billion market just for medical marijuana. So you start to look at recreational marijuana, and that number can swell to over $6 billion or more by 2020, which is probably more because that's what Colorado found out, that it was just a huge boon for their economy. You've got Nevada that's voting for recreational marijuana, and Washington Post says while home to only 2.8 million people, legal weed in Nevada could have an outsized national impact due to Las Vegas and the tourism that goes on there. And they get 40 million visitors a year. So, you talk about Denver and the impact it's had on their tourism. Now you add that to Las Vegas, and that opens up a whole new range of possibilities there. Arizona also voting for recreational marijuana. And this is the 3rd act of marijuana legalization playing out in the West this November, they say. It's also the state giving marijuana proponents their toughest fight. And right now, July poll found that only 39% of likely voters support the measure, while 53% oppose. Massachusetts voting for recreational marijuana. They right now are one of the deepest blue states in the nation. And but, right now it seems like voters aren't really, they're kind of teeter-tottering on it. 41% saying they'd vote for it. 50% or more say that they would vote against it. Maine voting for recreational marijuana. Right now, polls are about 50-50 in Maine. Now we get into the medicinal realm. Florida is voting for medicinal again. If you remember, there was a big push at the end by anti-medical marijuana, the anti-medical marijuana establishment, and it ended up rejecting the measure in Florida last year. Well, it's going to be voted on again, so we'll see how that pans out. Also, Arkansas voting for medical marijuana, and North Dakota and Montana. So if we see a decent turnout and some decent results, right now you have 26 states that are medicinal, and this would really put us over the top as far as getting common sense drug policy enacted here in the United States. And I say common sense because they figured out that this was common sense back in 1971 with the Schaefer Commission. And I've brought this up on earlier episodes, but I find it very, very important to bring this up again. If you don't know the Schaefer Commission, then I would suggest you take a look at it and its study. The study was detailed and called Marijuana, a Signal of Misunderstanding. And you can find it on archive.org. It's very, very important that you get this and you spread it around. Because of what's involved in that report. It was a 200-page report. It was the largest study into marijuana before 1971 and since 1971. And some of the findings that they found were absolutely unbelievable. And here it says, no significant physical, biochemical, or mental abnormalities could be attributed solely to their marijuana smoking. And this is on page 61 of the report. Page 36 says no valid stereotype of marijuana users or non-users can be drawn. Page 42 says young people who choose to experiment with marijuana are fundamentally the same people socially and psychologically as those who use alcohol and tobacco. I mean, you take a look at the dangers of alcohol and tobacco, and you put that up against marijuana, and they just, they don't compare. Page 88, no verification is found of a causal relationship between marijuana use and subsequent heroin use. Page 96 says most users, young and old, demonstrate an average or above average degree of social functioning, academic achievement, and job performance. Why? Because they can concentrate probably a lot better. They're not as distracted. They're not as stressed out. And it may be a good way to get them off of the stimulant medications that people have been given for ADHD, and like Ritalin, which is just basically meth. It's prescription meth. So get them off that. That would be great. Page 73, in sum, the weight of the evidence is that marijuana does not cause violent or aggressive behavior. If anything, marijuana serves to inhibit the expression of that behavior. Page 75 says, in short, is not generally viewed by participants in the criminal justice community as a major contributing influence in the commission of delinquent or criminal acts. You don't see people smoking a joint and then figuring, I'm going to go rob a bank. That's not exactly how they feel. And I just don't understand. Of course, I do understand why they do this. It's because there's so many people that use marijuana that it creates a criminal element where there should be no criminal element. Page 78 says neither the marijuana user nor the drug itself can be said to constitute a danger to public safety. Page 79 says recent research has not yet proven that marijuana use significantly impairs driving ability or performance. Page 84, no reliable evidence exists indicating that marijuana causes genetic defects in men. And finally, page 130 says marijuana's relative potential for harm to the vast majority of individual users and its actual impact on society does not justify a social policy designed to seek out and firmly punish those who use it. And, of course, the DEA has it Schedule 1, which is pretty interesting because that means it has no medicinal benefit. But if you go to the U.S. Patent Office website, you'll find patent number 6630507 that was awarded to the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, this is a department under the Corporation of the United States of America, the same corporation that the DEA falls under, and it was awarded a patent on cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants, which absolutely means that it has medicinal benefit. And it lists no less than 18 peer-reviewed studies to back it up. And it lists patents as far back as 1942 that talk about the medicinal benefits. So this is a total and complete dichotomy that should somebody or people go and file a lawsuit, especially anybody that's a federal employee that has been discriminated against or fired, active duty military, because it's a Schedule 1 drug. It's not. It should not be. There is clear medicinal benefit as proven by this patent. So that's something to look at. Also, H.R. 1635 that was introduced into Congress. The 114th Congress actually renewed it. Representative Perry Scott out of Pennsylvania started the Charlotte's Web Medical Act of 2015. And that has to do with your cannabinol-rich plants. It's a start. That's the way it starts. But I can tell you that if these referendums are successful, and some of them will be, that should push us over the top because you already have more than half of the states with medicinal access to marijuana. And it makes you wonder, since I was talking about the DEA scheduling it Schedule 1, that in and of itself is just a tremendous disservice to the American people and the American taxpayer. And USA Today was talking about a survey that reveals what Americans fear most. And one of the biggest fears of America is their own government. They fear their own government. They don't trust their own government. It says here in this article, this year, the survey also focused on Islamophobia and Americans' belief in conspiracy theories surrounding 9/11, President Obama's birth certificate, and the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And according to the survey, more than half of Americans believe the government is hiding information on 9/11. Of course they are. Name one thing that the government has done right. Please, anybody, in the comments section of this video, please go ahead and tell me one thing that the government's run that they haven't run into the ground, that they haven't abused, because they have abused everything. If you blindly trust the government at this point, I don't know what to tell you. No one should trust the government at all, at any time, even if they were doing their job effectively and efficiently. Because if you did, those checks and balances just would not be there. And that's what we need most, is checks and balances. And it just seems to me that there are still too many people out there that put their faith in the government God instead of the one true God that they should be putting their faith in. And that's done by design. But hey, you know what? The government's got your best interest at heart. They really, truly do. And they see those pesky Russians out there are going to go and run amok on our elections. So now, according to the Washington Examiner, the Pentagon is now joining the Homeland Security and the FBI in eyeing oversight and control of elections. What does this mean? When you start having the Department of Defense getting involved in our elections, is that meaning that we have like a quasi-martial law scenario that's unfolding? That if we're going to vote, now you're going to have military involved? It seems to me that there is way too much going on here, way too much involvement going on by our government. And believe me, folks, these people don't have your best interest at heart. I can tell you firsthand, they do not. They don't have anybody's best interest at heart but themselves. And the only thing they do is they use their position of power within government to exploit you and to benefit them. That's what they do. And they're using Russia as a convenient excuse to go ahead and put control measures in place to ensure that the selection process goes off as planned. And there is absolutely no way that you're going to have a fair election, period, unless you have oversight by the people, not by a UN organization, not by the Pentagon, not by the Department of Homeland Security, certainly not by the FBI. They won't even prosecute Hillary for her emails, let alone oversee an election. It's unbelievable. I just hope that people understand what's going on here. And if you want a great documentary to watch, and this is about 11 years old, watch Hacking Democracy by, it's an HBO documentary, but Bev Harris of blackboxvoting.org went and uncovered a bunch of fraud with regards to the Diebold voting machines, and it will floor you if you haven't seen it. And this was 10 years ago. They haven't fixed the glitch. And now they're going to get the FBI and the Pentagon involved? I mean, come on, this is crazy. In our final news story of today, we have a red alert by Business Insider as they say get ready for a severe fall in the stock market. This according to HSBC. Now, what's interesting is we had this right prior